Welcome back to another episode of Global Card Collectors. Today we have a very special guest, Jake Roy, 90s b-ball cards on Instagram, and more importantly on YouTube. I highly recommend you subscribe, watch his videos if you have any interest in 90s basketball cards. And if you're just interested in collecting, he provides a lot of interesting views, very good at sharing information and just how to look at cards. So with that short introduction, but we're really pleased to have you. Welcome to Global Card Collectors, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad we could find some time. I know both we have busy schedules, different time zones, so working through all that with all of us, I'm glad we found time.
Exactly. And with us, a resident 90s b-ball cards knowledge base is Nathaniel. And I'm going to kind of let him drive this episode because he is, as I said, much more knowledgeable than I am. How you doing today, Nathaniel?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm very excited for this. When I got back into the hobby, kind of same as everyone around, well, not everyone, but same as a lot of people around COVID, Jake was the first guy that when I was searching around on YouTube, he was the first one I found, and I've watched like literally all of your videos. I love them. My wife knows who you are when your face pops up on YouTube. She's like, "That's Jake Roy." So you're a minor celebrity here in my household, at least, and I really love your enthusiasm for 90s cards and 90s basketball.
It's a passion that runs deep.
Yeah. So getting into that, I was curious a little bit about your backstory. Like, what was the inspiration to start the YouTube channel? When did you do that? Like, because that was kind of cutting edge at the time, I would think, right? There weren't a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, so I think I recently hit my 7-year anniversary. I saw a notification pop up. So what would that have been? 2018, I must have started sometime around then. But yeah, so the reason I started, I started collecting when boy, how old was I? I don't know. It was 1995. I can remember the year more than my age. But in collecting goes through its ebbs and flows, right? So, it was something that, once got into like college, it wasn't something I did as seriously, as I had before. So, I'd pick up some packs and boxes, during school breaks and stuff like that. I always loved ripping wax. And kind of stash away. I typically would try to figure out what were some of the newer releases that I liked. And then I think sometime, after my daughter was born, I was like, feel a little nostalgic and went down memory lane, looked at my old collection. I really wanted to start filling in some of the gaps. So I I took some of those things that I pulled from packs in the mid 2000s or whatnot, sold them and bought more penny cards. And, the rest is history, as I say. But in that process, I was, doing a lot of searching on eBay for cards, and I was finding that a lot of the cards that I was looking for happened to be on Facebook. So at one point, Penny Hardaway fan group popped up on my Facebook feed. Brian Wells, who a lot of people know well from Ship My Cards, was the one that created that for penny collectors, because that's what he was, or is really still. So I was meeting a lot of people. A lot of people were getting back into cards, and they had a lot of questions. And when I was a kid, I would pore over the Beckett magazines and just, I would almost try to memorize a lot of the pack odds. Just pouring through, looking at what was coming out, what were the different intricate designs on the inserts, all kinds of stuff. I'd really nerd out on it. And a lot of that information just stuck. So I would find a lot of questions pop up in these Facebook groups that I happened to remember the answers to. And I would keep, answering these questions and trying to help people out. But I was seeing a lot of the same questions come repeatedly, right? The same products people talk about. Oh, how hard was it to hit a Scoring Kings from 93 Ultra, right? Stuff like that. So when I started repeating, the same information over and over, I was like, there's got to be a better way. So then I said, why don't I make some videos? And that way, when these questions pop up, I can reference the video. I can show people the video, and they can, learn about that question, but also maybe a little bit of a deeper dive into more. So, started the channel, started ripping boxes and wax with my brother, like we used to do. And then eventually started, branching out into some other stuff, but always kind of keeping that core of trying to share my experience and any information that I have or any information that I've gleaned, and share it with people so they can learn and maybe, get interested in the same type of stuff or different stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And I agree that it's super helpful, like gold label or some product like that that blows my brain. I have to review to your videos to have any idea what's going on with those. So for especially for some of those complicated 90s sets, your videos are a godsend for sure.
Yeah, there's so many of those. Gold Label is a great example. Flare Showcase, I remember when it came out, was so confusing to me. I remember it's a favorite set of mine, and so I've memorized it now. But like the shop owner trying to explain to us, how all the different rows and sections all worked out, and what do you need to pay attention to, and then the legacies on it. It really was hard to wrap my head around. And then reading through the Beckett, trying to figure it out, and eventually I got my head around it. And now it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's easy. I can explain it to somebody, but somebody brand new to it, it's like me trying to figure out select now. It's like, okay, you've got a concourse that's that good or not? I have no idea. I have to ask
Right.
somebody else that knows.
Right. So let's talk about your PC a little bit. I think when people think of you, the first thing they think of is Penny Hardaway.
Yep.
But how did that happen? Because my understanding is you were a kid from New England. So why weren't you a, I don't know, Dana Barros fan or something? I don't know who would have been on the Celtics at that point. How did you become
Yeah,
a Penny fan?
I do have a soft spot for Dana Barros, but not enough to collect his cards. But yeah, no. So in the '90s, Jordan ruled the landscape, right? So everybody that grew up in the '90s and collected, everybody assumes you must collect Jordan. Well, my brother was the Jordan fan, my younger brother, and we were a little bit over a year apart in age, but we would, a lot of rivalry there, right? So we played on a lot of sports teams together and stuff like that. So we'd always be at each other's throats. So I couldn't root for the same guy as him, right? So he's got Jordan, he's got the Bulls, great, good for him. So I was trying to figure out who was going to be my guy in my team because it couldn't be that. And I remember, I was watching a game one day. We were watching the Bulls, and I'm seeing Jordan. I'm seeing, okay, well, there's this other guy who's really good, Scottie Pippen. Like, maybe I'll go for another guy who's good on the same team. But I was like, I don't want to do the same team. So then, a week or two pass, and I'm watching another game, and it's a team that's wearing blue this time. And blue's my favorite color. So, okay, you got my interest there. And there's another guy that's playing really well. And I'm like, wait a second, didn't I just see this guy playing on a different team? So for those who weren't watching basketball in the '90s, there were a couple of years that Penny Hardaway and Scottie Pippen had very similar haircuts. And watching basketball games on standard def TVs, not the high def, if you could make out a number, you were lucky in some cases, right? So they looked similar enough on the standard def TVs. I was kind of confused about who they were. And then fast forward another week, I'm seeing them play against each other. And now I'm really like, okay, are they twins? I have no idea. So my dad's explaining to me, like, that's Penny Hardaway. He's on the Magic. That's Scottie Pippen. He's on the Bulls. And Penny Hardaway's giving Jordan the business. So I'm like, well, that's my guy. He wears my favorite color. He's giving Jordan the business. He looks like this other guy. So I stuck with him. And through the '90s, Penny Hardaway was a pretty smart pick. He was really kind of the number two behind Jordan. When Jordan was out of the league for the year and a half that he was, Penny was the guy. It was Penny and Sean
Right.
Kemp really were the two guys. And if it wasn't for injuries, Penny, a lot of people say, would he have been Jordan? Probably not to that extent, but he probably would have been bigger than Kobe, or at least as big as Kobe. So, but he did get injured, but I still stuck with him. I have all those nostalgic memories. I still love the jerseys. If you ask me what basketball team I'm a fan of, I'm going to say I'm an Orlando Magic fan because of Penny. I love Disney. Disney's in Orlando. That's why they're the Magic. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But
No,
yeah, so Penny just stuck.
that's awesome. And it seems like there's a lot of people like you because despite the injuries and everything, he's still, I don't know, top 10 valuable from the 90s, I would think, or higher.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, in some cases, depending on the card, it might be like top five, maybe top
yeah,
three in some cases. So
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
we're all
Um,
crazy.
you've got some other side PCs I've noticed when you go through these sets and stuff. You're like, this one doesn't have a penny, so I'll collect I think KG, Iverson.
Yep.
Who are some of those players that you prefer?
Yeah, so probably too many side PCs, which it was something that was I've actually pared it down since I was a kid. I had like probably 20 side PCs, and it was really that was really a function of trading with my brother because he was the Jordan fan. So Jordan cards were always more expensive. So when I was trying to make a trade, if I had a Jordan card, I would have to kind of take on some other stuff. So all of a sudden, I started getting all these other players, Jason Kidd and Grant Hill and all these other guys. But so I've narrowed it down now. So Penny, Iverson, KG, and then a little bit of Vince Carter with the Raptors.
Nice.
Baron Davis with the Hornets. I like Lamar Odom really with the Clippers. Michael Finley, I also get some of his every
Nice.
so often. And then, like you had said, if I don't have a penny from the set or if Penny isn't in the set and one of those guys isn't in the set, then I'll probably opt for like another player from the Magic. Um, Sometimes I'll go a different route also, but those are the players that, if I'm searching for a card, those are the safe searches on eBay.
Nice. And would you consider yourself primarily a player collector, or what's your lane of collecting, would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm a player collector. I mean, I do have the ultimate goal of I want to have one card from every set, insert set parallel minus one of ones from the 90s. But I want to have the penny from each of those that he's in. And then, those other guys are secondary if Penny isn't in the set. Or if Penny's in a Suns uniform, I might make an exception and have the Penny, the Suns, and the Iverson if they're both in the set. So, but player
Nice.
collector for sure.
And do you dabble in other sports? I think I've
Yeah.
seen Packers cards, which as a growing up a Bears fan, I don't love that about you, but no one's perfect.
Yeah, I won't hold it against you. But yeah, so grew up a Packers fan. That's a whole other story. But yeah, I do get some Packers cards. Brett Favre, I have a lot of nostalgia for him, not the greatest guy in the world. So, picking up his cards every so often is something that I have to fight with myself. It's a real wrestle whenever I'm getting one of those cards. So I don't have too many of them. Love Reggie White. Don't have many, if any. I mean, I've got a couple of small Reggie White cards, but then Mason Crosby is my guy for like modern stuff. So trying to put together, a lot of the Prism parallels. He's only in 1 year of Prism, 2019, if I remember the year off the top of my head. So I love getting rare, jersey numbered, low numbered Mason Crosby cards, and not a ton of people collect kickers. So they don't show
Yeah,
up often, but I don't have a lot of competition when they do come up. So that's nice.
that's pretty cool. I think you said you still consider yourself a Magic fan. Are you a
Yeah.
Paolo? Do you collect Paolo? Do you collect Franz? Any of these guys?
I don't like Franz much. I'm an interesting Magic fan in the sense of like I love like when I was growing up and playing like Madden, or I was a big NBA Live player. I always like constructing teams, right? So I always try to put myself in the GM hat, trying to construct a team. And I look at the Magic. Over the years, I was the guy who was saying to trade Aaron Gordon, right? Right after he won the slam dunk contest, I'm like, trade him. He's never going to be worth more. Trade him, build for a team, stop trying to fight to be the eighth seed or the seventh seed in the East. Nobody wants to be that. Trade Vooch. So Franz, I'm not a big fan of. I think that they could trade him and get more than he's worth. I do like Paulo. I think he's a great player to build around. In terms of cards, I don't collect them actively, but if I pull, like if I open, I do open modern products. And if I
Cool.
pull any of the Magic players, I'll hang on to them. So I think I might. I know I have a couple of base Prism rookies of Paulo. I don't know if I might have pulled a silver, but that's probably about the extent of what I have for him.
Makes sense. And since we're talking about the modern NBA, do you have a pick for the finals to give us?
Oh boy. So it's so hard to pick for the finals and not have my heart in it. Um, so I think I'm trying to remember. I was talking to somebody at the beginning of the season, and I just kind of threw out that I think the Warriors will be in the finals. And I had said back then it was going to be Warriors Celtics. And looking right now, like that's not a terrible pick. I don't feel like the most confident in the world about that, especially with the injury for Jimmy Butler. Hopefully he can get back soon, but it seems like the contusion's a little bit more serious than that. Um, but we do also have the history. Whenever Kendrick Lamar drops an album, the Warriors win the championship. So Kendrick
Oh,
Lamar dropped an album. So let's not make that a lie, right? so so
I
I'll
hadn't
stick with that. I'll stick with that.
I hadn't heard that correlation.
I
Nice.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's kind of like your what was your even year thing with the Giants for a while,
Yeah, yeah,
John?
every other year is 2010, 2012, 2014. Just
Interesting.
less talented, lucky teams will win the World Series every other year. Yeah,
Right. So maybe there's a Kendrick Lamar thing. I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so let's we got to make this a global card collector connection here. So what we came up with was to talk about Hakeem Olajuwon as kind of a vehicle to talk about 90s cards if we're honest, but I also love Hakeem. So some of my favorite memories growing up were the Dream Shake. I think that was
Mm,
the move I tried in my front driveway the most. Never was able to utilize that in a game, but I tried to learn it. And then later in life, I studied abroad in Egypt and anyway, became real interested in the Middle East. But I was thinking that probably the first time I ever heard about Ramadan was from Hakeem in some of those years where Ramadan happened to fall in the playoffs and people were talking about, will he be strong enough with
mm.
being exhausted from not eating all day? So I think it's just interesting, like sociologically, that basketball is what taught me about Ramadan, interestingly. So those are some of my like youthful memories of Hakeem. Do you guys have any memories to share?
Uh, those are good ones. I mean, obviously the titles, like he was the man. When Jordan was out for those two seasons. Yeah, he seemed. I mean, he was exotic or like intriguing, and he's from Nigeria. Like, where's that? And he was awesome. So it was just an impressionable kid. Those are kind of my memories.
Yeah, and so my older brother was a big fan of Hakeem with the Rockets, and of course, as a Magic fan, I've got a love-hate relationship. I think Hakeem was great. I loved watching him play, but always being kind of like, okay, Jordan's out of the way, and now we've got to try to overcome the Rockets, which the Magic couldn't. It kind of there are those memories. But actually, my brother, I remember telling me a story. He went to a World Cup game that was local to us, and I was little, so I don't remember. But I guess Hakeem was there watching, and he came in surrounded by security. And according to my brother, take it for what it's worth, he snuck under one of the security guards' legs and gave Hakeem a low five. So
That's
I don't know
amazing.
if that's true or not, but kind of a cool connection there.
That's awesome. Um, so I mean, I think people know about Hakeem, but his accolades are pretty amazing. Two times final MVP, regular season MVP, all-time blocks leader. Anyway, so probably, I don't know, top 15 all-time kind of player. Um, okay, here's the thing that people like to talk about mostly with Jordan, but it relates to other 80s players. Um, do you have an opinion, Jake? Here, let me show my examples. We've got the we got the star Hakeem rookie
Yeah.
card here, 84, 85, and then we've got the Fleer.
hmm
Um, any feelings on the true rookie card?
Yeah. Well, so before we get that to his accolades, one thing I love to point out about Hakeem, he's one of, to my recollection, two players to have ever recorded a quadruple double in a
Oh
game.
yeah.
And I think he did it twice, and David Robinson did it once. So I think that's pretty impressive. Triple doubles seem to have been, something that people are desensitized to now, but quadruple doubles still, I think, hold quite
Yeah.
a cachet. Um, but yeah, so on the Star versus Fleer, it's one of those that, my opinion, I could be pushed over with a feather. So I kind of go with what the general collecting consensus, because I don't really have a dog in the race. But I would say for now it's the 86 Fleer. Like, I get all the stuff about distribution, random packs. But I think more so than that, that's just kind of what the collecting community gravitates towards. So if I was collecting a player that's in both, I would probably prioritize getting the 86 Fleer. But I have started to over the last couple of years, the 84 star seems to have a little bit more importance than it once did to me. So, if somebody tomorrow said, "Well, nope, the collecting community's decided it's the 84 star and it's not the 86 Leary," okay, I'd accept it. I wouldn't fight that. So,
Yeah. It does, to me, it seems pretty consensus driven because, they're examples like the early Topps cards, a lot of them didn't have the license, but we accept them as the true rookies, and
Hmm.
this one does have the license, but it doesn't have the random pack. So it just sort of seems to be what the hobby decides collectively. I'm a star guy, but I'm open to your uh, democratic process there. Okay, so we were gonna maybe the main thing that at least I wanted to talk about because everyone, especially now in the modern or super modern era, people focus on parallels mostly, but the 90s was a time when inserts really thrived. So we're gonna probably talk about some Hakeem parallels a bit, but we're gonna focus more on inserts because I think that's something particularly awesome about the 90s. Um, and so Hakeem's in a lot of the great sets. Not all of them. There's ones like Jambalaya and stuff he's not in. Several others that I mentioned here we can talk about if we want to, but he's in a lot of the great sets. So we're gonna run through some of those. Um, the first, let me see. I think I've got this one. The Beam Team. That was kind of the
Mm.
original set. I mean, not probably not the first insert, but the first one that really popularized it in basketball cards. Hakeem's obviously in there. He wasn't in, I was surprised to see he's not in Scoring Kings the next year. I was looking that up yesterday. Um, and
Interesting. Of all
yeah,
the players that they have in that set, you'd think, Scoring Kings, that's something that he definitely did well. So
right. We
that's a
needed
surprise.
Jeff Malone in there, but we didn't need Hakeem. So yeah,
Right.
explain that one. Um, this is one of my favorites is the
Hmm.
94 Intense from Emotion, gradually and slowly trying to work on that set. I think it's just beautiful. Not rare at all, but a beautiful set.
It is.
Um, Another big one is the hot numbers. Probably
Mm.
won't show up amazing here with the lenticular thing going on, but Hakeem's in there. That's a affordable one that I think is pretty awesome.
And those, like you said, like they don't show up well. I mean, I have never seen a video, picture, anything that really captures those well. And I'm not the biggest fan of lenticular cards, but when you get one of those in hand, I mean, the team for arena designs really did a number on that. Like it really hits you visually. Like Thrill Seekers from '96 Fleer, but hot numbers really, so anybody who hasn't seen one in hand, I would say, go get, an Eddie Jones or somebody, just to see the effect. It's really something to behold.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like you said, I'm usually not a big fan of them, but when they get it right, like with this or the Jambalaya, they're pretty incredible in hand.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't get them right, and I'm not a big fan.
Right.
Um, So the one probably from this list, the one that as a kid like excited me the most was when in '96 Skybox came out with the autographic set. Something
Mm.
about I don't know, I've always thought something intrigued me about autographs ever since I was a kid. And so when these were inserted in packs and for some of the sets, they weren't even that. I think there were some sets that it was like 1 in 24 packs. So I didn't know at that time that it was only, I think, isn't it true that they're kind of like different sets had different players? Like it wasn't actually where necessarily Hakeem was in Skybox Premium, but
Right.
anyway,
And they didn't really publicize that, but later on, like 99 2000, I know you'll get a checklist for the insert sets in different products. Skybox Dominion, it'll tell you which of the autographics you can actually hit. um Whereas, like, I think if you look at the box for 96 97 hoops, there's a picture of the Grant Hill autographic. So, like, that's a pretty clear indicator that I'm fairly certain you could only get the Grant Hill in the hoops.
mm,
But if somebody told me that, hey, I pulled a Grant Hill autographics out of, EX 2000, I could believe it. But I think it's fairly well accepted that certain ones are in certain products, but there's not like I haven't seen a list that tells you exactly which products for which
yeah,
ones.
I was so
Hakeem is a short
excited
print
to,
though.
yeah, oh yeah. And yeah, they had the whole blue ink versus black ink, which I think generally the blue ink was rarer, although some guys like I think KG mostly signed in blue. There's a few guys like that.
Yeah,
Um,
because like Hakeem was one of the short prints. I know like KG was a short print, but his black is like a super short print. Rod Strickland, George McLeod, Scottie Pippen. I think Clyde Drexler was also a short print. Um, but yeah, like the Hakeem's. I feel like the Hakeems are the hardest to find other than Rod Strickland, George McLeod, and his blues are just like impossible. And as they start to fade, some of them start to lose the red ink, so that blue starts to look a little bit more black. So it's like over time, it seems like there's fewer and fewer blues out there because of that color degrade.
That's interesting. I my big autographics pulls were Travis Best and Kenny Smith, so I didn't have the best success with that.
Not bad though.
I
Any
know. It was
autographics are great. I got Corey Alexander and Ty Lue, so you know.
nice. Nice.
That's a nice 2-on-2 matchup there. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, the hot shots from Flair is a great one. I would love to get that. Hakeem, it's the red of the flaming basketball in the
Hmm.
background and the Rockets jersey. That works really well. So I'm a big fan of that one. A cut above from speaking of EX 2000, that's a
Mm.
classic, intricately die cut card with the saw wheel behind Hakeem. Um, I do sort of one thing that I have problems with Hakeem is that he looks more and more old as these insert sets are like by the time basketball cards are in their prime, he's no longer in his prime. So like you see the big knee braces and everything on him. So I do wish we
That
could get like athletic 1992 Hakeem in some of these sets.
that is one of the things with Hakeem because so my younger brother, he was a Jordan collector. He's now switched out of Jordan primarily and switched into Hakeem. Kind of casually though, but like that's one of the things that he and I talk about is like he's not the most photogenic player in the world, which is kind of a bummer because how do you capture in a card the dream shake, right?
Dream
Like that
shake,
was
yeah,
his signature move, and it's great to watch in film. But how do you get that on a card?
right.
And there are some cards that he has great pictures of him, dunking or a nice turnaround jumper. And it's funny too. You mentioned because like '92 was when he was, probably doing some more photogenic moves, but the jerseys I feel like were more boring.
Mm,
Until they switched. And some people hate those pinstripes, but I think they're very '90s, and I think they're kind of fun. But can't get it all right.
that's right. Yeah. Um, some other ones to mention. I'd say his UD game jersey. That's a huge card.
Mm.
I don't even know what the estimated print run on those is, but it's very low. Um, so that was a big deal. At least the first major set that had game used jerseys in it. I think there was maybe like a college set of some sort that had game used jerseys before that.
Yeah, '96 there was a college set that had it for press pass. We think that they were game worn. You never really know with press pass, but yeah, the first NBA worn. And I think because I think the football game jerseys came out before the NBA game jerseys. But yeah, it was the first game jersey for an NBA product in '97.
Nice. And you have a penny of this card, right?
I do. There's two pennies in that set, a home and away. I have the away, which the away is actually his blue uniform, which is actually the alternate. The black says away, the blue is the alternate. But regardless, yeah, I got that at the National in 2023, I want to say, if I remember correctly.
Man, that's an amazing card.
Yeah.
Um, One of the rarest inserts from the 90s, as far as I know, is the Ultra Stars Gold, which again doesn't show up amazing in pictures because it's embossed and has all this refracting light, but it looks very flat when you look at an image of it. But that's a pretty amazing card. I've got a Sean Kemp of that I would gladly trade out for a Hakeem if I could trade up for that. But is
You know,
Penny in that set or no?
he is. He is. I got that at the National in Atlantic City in 22. I mean, yeah, in hand, those things are you really get what all the hype and craze is about. They are gorgeous. So for those who maybe can't, because they're expensive, who can't afford to get one, even if it is John Wallace or Marcus Camby, it's something like the Z Force '97 Z Force. What's it called? Rave Review. Those have a very similar hollow foil pattern in the back. It's copper. They don't have the embossing, so it's a little different. But if you want to see what the effect is, that's a more affordable set. That's not gold; it's copper, but you get that kind of refracting. It's cool.
Nice. And I think there's a Instagram account called Card Channel where the guy does a bunch of math and tries to kind of estimate print runs for some of these cards. And in most cases, it's not 100%. But in some cases, when you know the serial number cards, he can really get it. But anyway, I think he estimated there were less than 100 of the Ultra Stars Gold made, which for a 90s insert, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've seen some of those, so I think that one's a pretty good estimate. I would caution people to look at the there's a his posts have a lot of disclaimers, right? And they also kind of share with the math. There's a lot of fuzzy math going on there, right? So don't take those print runs to gospel. Like one of the most recent ones that came out, I think, was the 97 Hollow Jams. And there's a
uh-huh.
lot of assumptions built into those calculations. And so I think a lot of that can be used for entertainment purposes. And it's kind of cool to see. But there's stuff like the triumvirates, which we could probably talk about later. There are serial numbered cards in those boxes that also have stated pack odds. You can absolutely use those and calculate out, all the different stuff. But there's a lot of other calculations. If you go and look at the post, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? There's a lot of like, okay, well, we can assume that this product was printed the same as this product. It's like we can't make those assumptions. We don't know, but
Right.
yeah, it's
I
interesting to
think it
think
can
about.
give you a general idea with a very wide margin if
Yes, yeah,
you think
plus or
of it.
minus 50%.
Right, exactly. I think that's fair. Uh, Ultra just had like a bunch of crazy sets that or crazy insert sets that year that Hakeem is in. The Ultra Abilities Superstar is always one of my
Mm.
favorite. Awesome die cut. Um, Star Power Supreme is amazing, but also a lot of condition issues with that one, so be
Oh yeah,
careful. The Triumvirate, like you mentioned, which has the three levels to it. This is another one that I get very confused by. I can't just look at it and tell, whereas I think you can. So I think in the past,
I've honed my
I've,
eye.
yeah, I've messaged you before being like, is this one an Illuminator? I can't tell. Um, so those are some awesome ones with Hakeem.
Yeah,
Um, He's not in the 97 Platinum Portrait, but he's in the 98 Molten Metal Fusion that has the same kind of vibe to it, which I think those cards are great. But he's not in some of those are serial numbered, but he's not in the serial numbered portion of that set.
which I
Um,
I I think is great. Penny's also not in the serial number portion of it, which makes it though. I mean, those titaniums still go for a boatload compared to some of the other inserts from that same year. But I'm happy that Penny's not one that's numbered to 40. Iverson is,
yeah,
and I would love to get an Iverson, but there's only 40 of them. And
right.
I think though, to the point about the platinum portraits, because Penny's in both, so I have both. I like the molten metal fusions better. I like having that full color picture, like a full body picture. And most of them are pretty good pictures of the player too. But they also have the player's last name, laser cut out, which I also think is a really cool thing. So I think you get the same effect with the face, with some added features there. I think those are really cool. So if again, the platinum portraits are very expensive. The fusions are still expensive, but if you get one that's not serial numbered and you're not trying to get the titanium, they can be fairly affordable.
Yeah. I've never had a Platinum Portrait, but looking at the pictures, I like the Molten Metal Fusion better as well. I think, like you said, it does the same thing, but also has the added color picture that's great. I wondered you have more in-depth knowledge of 90s and 90s inserts than I do. Do you have omissions here that you would want to include of good
Well,
Hakeem inserts?
I think you hit all the big ones. I mean, there are definitely, I mean, there's a ton that I could talk about. So I think one that I love, well, there's a couple. Um, I love the 98, 99 Topps Chrome Apparitions Refractors. Those are numbered to 100. And those are a very colorful card. There's a lot of etching. So the refractor really plays with a lot of those colors. It's really cool. It's a penny that I had dreamt of. I finally got one, and very happy. I paid more than I think I paid more than they're currently selling for, and I couldn't care less. So, they're just beautiful. And
Uh,
Hakeem is in that set. Jordan's not in that set. So Jordan's in the base tops without the chrome.
hmm.
Um, but Hakeem is in the chrome, and I think Hakeem collectors can rejoice for that because it's a gorgeous one.
How did that happen?
Um,
That Jordan wasn't in it. Do we know?
yeah, yeah. So '98 was when they had the lockout. Jordan was debating retirement, so Topps rushed out their Topps flagship paper, whatever you want to call it, the non-chrome version of Topps, to make sure that Jordan was in it. But the chrome was going to come out later. So what they did to make sure they had Jordan in there is they created a chrome preview set where you could get the base chrome and the refractor of Jordan. I think John Stockton was in there, Michael Finley was in there, a couple other players. So Jordan was in like that apparitions, but then he had retired, so they lost the rights to put him in products. So that's why he's not in any of the Chrome stuff. He's not in the Chrome apparitions. So you'll 98, 99 is an interesting year because of the
Yeah.
lockdown and because of Jordan's retirement kind of midway through. So yeah, that's the story there. But I don't think they replaced him in the apparition set. I think they just ran the set without that one.
Okay.
So another one is 98, 99 again, UD Choice Star Quest. So you've got the four levels there. The top level being the Star Quest, the 4-star, the gold. Those are also numbered to 100. And some people call them like the PMG gold because they've got gold foil all around. But just like the PMGs, I mean, condition is very difficult, especially on the golds. For whatever reason, that foil chipped and the edges and the corners almost always are going to have some sort of issues. But Hakeem's in there. I think it's actually a decent picture of Hakeem also. So he's taking a nice jumper. So that's a gorgeous one. Those are both very pricey though, very hard to find. So some of the ones that I think, well, there's another one along those same lines, the 97 SP Authentic Profiles. So there's 3 levels to that, the highest level being numbered to 100. It's got die cuts. But one of the sneaky things, and I haven't told many people about this, so there's 2 levels, right? So there's the level 1 and level 2 that get mixed up for one another. So most of the level 1s, you can get most of them for like $1 to $2, right? Except for like the Jordan maybe and the Kobe. But they're still not very expensive. But the golds are more rare. They've got some gold foil on them. They've also got some embossing, light embossing. It's not very obvious, but it's there. The hollow foil plays nicely with the embossing. So those get mismarked a lot. So if you're looking for them and you think you see a base listed, just double check, make sure it doesn't have the gold. It's one of those things that I look for a lot. They're not worth like exponentially more than the base, but 2, 3, 4% more, maybe, depending on which player it is, or I mean 2, 3, 4 times more depending on the players. So for example, Penny, I think his level 2 is probably a $20 card, whereas his level 1 is like a $5 card, right? So that's something to look out for. Again, I think they're cool. Some people think they're a little boring, but I enjoy them with the embossing and the hollow foil. Z-Force Quick Strike, I think, is a gorgeous one. Those don't break the bank.
Is that the one that looks mostly silver? Am I
Yeah, it's
thinking?
mostly silver, and then there's almost like an eye-shaped cutout in the middle that's acetate clear, you can see through. Those have a lot of issues with the silver hollow foil coming off. So look, if it looks like it has black dots all over it, it does. So that hollow foil can come off. Let's see, what are some of the others? 97 SPX is one of my favorite design sets. So the Hollow View Heroes, Hakeem is in that set. So the cool thing with 97 SPX is the entire set is all die cut the same exact design. All the inserts, everything. But all the cards are vertical. I mean, so they're horizontal, whereas the Hollow View Heroes is the only one that's vertical. So I think it plays a little bit more interesting. I think it's neat having all the horizontal and then that one vertical. I just think that the Hollow View Heroes, it's not the most rare. The promotion is more rare, but I think it looks better. I could be
Yeah.
argued out of that by some people, but that's my opinion, and I'm so
I,
um
I feel like you're the
not
foremost expert on SPX, so you're a big fan
it,
of it.
I
It's
may
from,
be.
from your channel.
I feel like a lot of people that are into 90s focus on Fleer, Tops, and Skybox. And Upper Deck in the 90s was like the king, and now
Yeah.
it's not. So I think SPX kind of gets a little bit of a lesser look because it's an Upper Deck set. But I could be wrong on that. There could be somebody else sitting there. They're just quiet. They're in the shadows. What are some of the other ones? I think a cool design, again, not expensive, is 95, 96 Fleer Metal, Maximum Metal. I think those are cool with all the metal and you got a little bit of a die cut on the top. He's in that older Rockets uniform. I think he's dribbling actually. I think it's cool enough, Hakeem. And then another one. This one's really rare, but I'm gonna say it right. And so you said it. Okay, I'm gonna do less preamble and just get right to it. So 95 96 EXL. There's an insert set in there called a cut above. So EXL was the precursor to EX 2000, right? So EX 2000, you already talked about the cut above, gorgeous. Everybody loves those. So this one was kind of the precursor to that, but Jordan's not in that set. Remember, 95 96, a lot of the sets didn't have Jordan. Jordan was just coming back, all that type of stuff. So Jordan's not in there. He is in like No Boundaries, which gets a lot of attention. He is in Natural Born Thrillers, that gets a lot of attention. The cut above was more rare. It was the most rare. So those were inserted 1 in 130 packs, if I remember correctly. So they were the hardest to hit. No Jordan in there. So a lot of people don't talk about that set. But Hakeem's in there, Magic Johnson's in there, Shaq is in there, no Penny. Um, so that's one it's rare, but I don't see them going for much considering how how low of a print run there were on those. So I think that's a
What
cool
are they,
chase.
what kind of design are they? I can't even picture that card.
Yeah, so like the EXL, it has kind of like a paper border, not paper, but it's like
Yeah.
a matte border
Yeah.
around it. I believe it's like a dark blue, and then inlaid in is I want to say it's 2 or 3 pictures of the player. So kind of like you have a profile picture in the foreground, and then I think you have 1 or 2 pictures of them playing in the background. So it's not like the most intricate design, but you could say the same thing about Natural Born Thrillers, right? The Jordan goes for
Yeah.
you know hundreds of dollars. But it's a rare one, right? And I think the EXL set is one of those that I don't know if it's just my nostalgia, but it I don't know, it exudes a certain vibe, and I feel like the cut above kind of takes that vibe to another level.
Hmm.
With that kind of it's a unique design with that paper kind of
Yeah.
mat around the edges. And it's a good chunk of the car that has that paper border. So condition can definitely be an issue with those, right? Those things can get scuffed up pretty easily. And then the last like true insert, this is one I've talked about for a few years, um, is 97 98 Star Attractions Gold. This was in Collector's Choice, but the gold parallel. So there's a silver one. You'll see those pretty readily. And again, Jordan's in there, Hakeem's in there. A lot of the silvers you can get for $1 to $5, but the golds were exclusively available in Anco packs. So these
Hmm.
Anco packs had one pack in like a blister that had 19 cards in it, right? So you'd buy those Anco packs, and of those Anco packs, the golds were inserted 1 in every 9 packs, right? So
Hmm.
these were specially distributed packs. There were not many of them produced. How many? Who knows? But then on top of those not being produced widely, 1 in 9 had a gold. So they're, again, Card Channel has some fuzzy math on how many they think were produced. I have no idea. Um, I think their number's lower, if I remember correctly, than what I think they actually were produced. But regardless, like they're in the hundreds, right? And for 90s cards, something that's not to remember that's in
Yeah.
the hundreds is really scarce. So they're hard to track down. I remember for the penny, I was searching for years to find a penny, and then eventually I found one, and then I found a bunch of them, right? And every time I found one, I'd buy them. They're super condition sensitive because they've got die cuts on the top, they've got die cuts on the bottom, gold foil. So like finding one that's in good shape is impossible. I had 5 pennies at one time. I took the 3 best looking ones. I sent them all to PSA. All 3 of them got a 9 somehow. Those are the only
Wow.
nines that ever got graded for the
Wow.
penny. Right now,
Huh.
not a lot of them get sent in for grading because they're not
Right.
in good shape. But like finding a 10 is like I would. I don't know if there's any. I'd have to look at the pop and see if there's any tens of any player. Right. So those are really hard to find in good shape, but they're also really hard to find in general. And they're ones that kind of fly under the radar right now. I know a lot of penny collectors that will beg me at times for if I have a duplicate of the gold, right? So
Hmm.
um, I don't know if Hakeem collectors are hoarding those golds, but I I know penny collectors do. So that's another one. I think it's a parallel insert that's really exclusive, really rare, one that not a ton of people know about. So those who are listening to the podcast get that little gem.
Nice. That's a great under the radar tip for sure. Um, all right. Let's talk about parallels a little bit. I didn't look into this as much just because I feel like, I say PMG and people know what that means, so it's not like we need to go into that. Although I will say, I'm not usually the biggest 97 red and green PMG guy for
Mm,
the price relative to what they look like, but the
hmm
Hakeem is a pretty cool shot. He's It's like up from the rim, basically. The
Yeah,
picture of him, I don't know, shooting a layup or rebounding, I'm not sure. But I will say that's a nice looking image of Hakeem on
it
the
is.
90s. Um, so we got rubies, we got credentials. There's the 24 karat gold, which is rare enough. I couldn't even find a picture of it for Hakeem. I had to put in one of the just regular golds. There's no
Yeah.
pictures of it on the internet that I could find. Um, all the refractors from Finest and Topps Chrome.
Hmm.
Uh, what did I say? Rubies. There's the Legacy collection that we mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Any of those
Credentials.
credentials? Yeah. And I love credentials, but these credentials images of Hakeem are a little underwhelming. He's like taking a 12-foot jump shot, it looks like.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
also, his
funny.
rookies are
I'll,
not the
I'll
best images either.
I'll jump in now because this is making me think. I mean, the one guy I kind of collect in '90s is Arvydas Sabonis, and
Mm.
his cards also aren't that interesting because it's kind of a similar Hakeem thing. As a big man, I think
Hmm.
it's just not as flying through the air and that kind of, anyway.
Right. I
Yeah.
wonder, did they not do as much defensive pictures then? Because I would think like Hakeem blocking people would maybe be his best images in this time, but I don't see a lot of
Yeah.
those pictures. He's like posting up or taking jump shots in all these pictures.
That's a good point because I do see like Dikembe Mutombo cards have a lot of good defensive photography, but I think that's because like that was what Dikembe was known for. That was his
Right.
his bread and butter, and he would score a little bit. I think with Hakeem, because like he was a prolific scorer, is maybe people weren't trying as hard to take good defensive because I mean they're definitely are. If you watch highlight tapes of him, there were some great moments where he had blocking some really good players. That's it. I never thought of that because like I'm now thinking 97, 98 finest, his golden boss die cut, if I remember correctly, is in the defenders subset. And if I'm picturing the card correctly, I think he's just boxing a guy out, which is
Yeah.
kind of like a eh.
He's boxing out Patrick Ewing, I think. I've got
Okay.
the picture of it on the spreadsheet
Yeah.
here.
So like that's cool he's against Patrick Ewing, but like for defenders, like there had to have been better pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
Interesting.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Do you have any, I don't know what to say beyond that on the parallels. The parallels are great. Anyone would love them. The 98 PMG is kind of a cool picture. I think is that I don't know. There's some Orlando Magic player trying to block Hakeem in that picture. I can't
I'm gonna
the picture
I'm gonna
is
guess Ronnie
small.
Cycli or Horace Grant.
Uh, the skin color makes me think not Ronnie Cycli, but
Okay. Horace Grant then. We'll go with that.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
not
sounds good.
cycling. Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, one parallel that I like, I think it's iconic, but it's not expensive, is 95, 96 Ultra Gold medallions, where you just got gold all over the card. It looks like a gold bar. I think those are really, really nice. So, and I don't know. I know the penny's like a $5 card, so I'd imagine that Hakeem's probably around the same price point. But I know people again they hoard them because that gold it shows when you chip that,
Right.
So people try to get those and try to get a 10 on them.
Were those like one per pack, or what was the how
Oh,
rare
off the top of my
were
head, I don't recall. I want to say that they were one in every other pack or so. I know 95 Ultra had like different configurations, like so retail
they?
um, versus hobby, but then I believe there were also jumbo packs or hanger packs. I can't remember which. So some of those might have had like more. Boy, I'm gonna. It's been a long. Now I'm really racking my brain because like 95 Ultra was not a set I really enjoyed because they didn't have a ton of inserts, right? We
Yeah.
wanted all the inserts. So I don't know if I've opened that on the channel now that you're mentioning it. But I do remember that they did not have the gold medallions for the rookies, right? So Kevin Garnett's rookie is in that. And I wish that they did. How cool would that have been to have like just an all gold background Kevin Garnett when he's, an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever he was. I think that'd be a really cool looking card.
Yeah.
But
That's interesting because Finest didn't have a refractor that year either for the rookies. So
right,
why did they not want us to have cool cards of KG? All
it's
these
a great
companies,
question.
right?
I think they knew how great he was going to be, and they were like, well, let's just, give him something to stick in their craw. Because like Jerry Stackhouse massive hype name, right? Like he wasn't the number one pick.
Yeah,
Joe Smith shocked everybody, but like everybody was like Jerry Stackhouse is going to be the next Jordan, right? He's the
yeah.
next guy out of
North
UNC, all that type of
Carolina.
stuff. They had insert sets that were dedicated to him. You know, Stackhouse's scrapbook. You'd think that they would have wanted refractors of him and gold medallions of him. Interesting.
Yeah, it is. Um,
Do you guys
well,
do you guys find that I mean, do you find that like younger people will get into 90s and collect like because it's hard to, like I wasn't collecting at that time. It's kind of a den zone for me as a Kings fan. Like Mitch Richmond didn't excite me very much. We pretty much suck every other year except for the good teams in the early 2000s. So it's, it always is bad. But I've Nathaniel has totally been the one to kind of lure me back in, and kind of like explore, and it's like overwhelming. I mean, there's so much cool stuff. Um, I still don't feel like I can like get my head around it, even though I try to learn.
Mm.
And I'm just curious how if you experience like other people kind of coming in who are, I guess, younger or I guess older or don't have the nostalgia like that. I mean, I was following the NBA the whole time, but I think he's a Bulls fan, so I don't know. You guys seem to have deeper nostalgia for that era maybe than I do, but do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't see a ton of it, but I definitely do see some people who are younger get into it. And it's usually, from my vantage point, it's usually some of those bigger name parallels, right? Those things that are making headline sales right now
Hmm.
that'll draw their eye. And let's not get it twisted. There are some of these kids at shows that have bigger bankrolls than I'm going to walk into a show. So some people are like, oh well, kids aren't going to buy a PMG. No, you'd be surprised. Some of these kids are walking in, they definitely can. So that's I see some of that, and not so much them getting into the inserts, with the exception of like the jambalayas, right? Or a couple of like those really
yeah.
premier sets. Hot numbers are definitely things that I see like kids will get interested in, but it's usually like they're focused on the Jordan, right? So it's kind of like a pick your spot type of thing. And I have seen some situations where like a kid will get drawn in by some of those big flashy parallels, and then they'll kind of like take that first step, and then okay, well let's do another and do another, and then all of a sudden like they're fully in it. I don't think it happens a lot, but I have seen it happen, and I logically it makes perfect sense to me, right? But I'm a 90s head, so I'm like everybody should be into this stuff. um but yeah, that's just from my vantage.
I mean, yeah, when I finally saw some of these things in hand for the first time, I mean, yeah, I was like, oh, I get it. It totally like, the shoe dropped. But yeah, I mean, you would think if it's all about the cards, I mean, it's kind of, I'm sorry, but the, second half of the 90s or mid 90s is the best. Like, there's no question, right? Um, if it is all about the cards, then people would really be able to get into it, even get real into it, like we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I find it kind of an interesting part of the hobby. I mean, obviously it's very
Yeah.
hot. It's very hot now. I mean, it's probably never been hotter, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a time that it was. I mean, things really got hot for Jordan Bulls stuff. During the pandemic when the Last Dance was coming out. That cooled down for pretty much everybody except for Jordan. So the Jordan stuff stayed up there. But yeah, I mean, I think the other cool thing that some people appreciate with the 90s is like everything started in the 90s in the sense of like any sort of innovation in cards. If you can think about, inserts started in the 90s, right? Parallels started in the 90s, autos started in the 90s, jersey cards, refractors, chromium cards, die cut cards, acetate cards, hollow foil, like every single kind of innovation. Now, in modern stuff, sometimes some of those are put together in a newer way, but there's no new innovations. There have been some. There's one thing I saw Panini tried doing. I think Blake Griffin's rookie year with like a video clip embedded into the card. That was a little wonky. But like I think some people appreciate that, and they're like, I want to go and get the first jersey that was ever made. Right? Maybe they don't really care what the player is; they just want that piece of history. I want to go and get the first pack pulled autograph, right? It wasn't the first time an autograph ever showed up on a card. Kids were bringing cards to the ballpark all the time, but they weren't always in in packs. So I think that some people have the appreciation for the history, and I think cards all the way back to their genesis, like history was an education or a major component to those in a lot of people's minds anyway. So I think that still is a draw for a lot.
That's cool. Do you collect non-playing days penny cards?
A little bit, like not a lot. Like I have some of his prism. Like if I find like a jersey match, right, and I like the picture that's on it, I'll grab it. Something that's a blue, and it's got a nice picture. But I've had some now and again. And again, if I pull one, like I've got some illusions. I love ripping illusions. If I pull a penny, I'll keep it. Um, but yeah, like I'm not. I
You don't
do want
search
to
it.
get. Yeah, like I do want to get one of his shoe cards. So like they've got some shoe stuff in like immaculate. I think those are really nice. They have some that have some really prime pieces of the shoe. Um, but it's not like it's one of those that I always look at it and I'm like, okay, I could buy this or I could take that same amount of money and buy this other really cool 90s card, right? So I'm
Yeah.
always making those decisions and it's the 90s stuff is always gonna kind of hold my attention a little bit longer. So there's some cool stuff. I know some people who like they love to get the modern penny stuff and the 90s. It's not my focus.
Cool. Nathaniel,
I think that's it. Jake, do you want to promote your TikTok that you're always threatening to to add something to, or any
That
other social
that
media
threat is always out there, you know. My daughter is always like, "Daddy, can we make a video?" And I'm like, "Sure. What do you want to make a video?" She goes, "Let's make a TikTok." And I'm like, "Of what? What do you want to make a TikTok of?" So yeah, yeah, that threat's always going to be out there looming. But yeah, so you can find me 90s underscore b-ball underscore cards. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I need to. I've been trying to get back to my very regular schedule of post. 7 years, and I think for the first like five and a half, six and a half, I was like very, very good about once a week, and I've just been so busy this last year. When I like I say in my videos now at the end, when I've got time, I try to make them as frequent as I can. But I'm working on another one right now. So you just saw the
Nice.
mail day video. I've got another one coming out. Hopefully I can get it out soon. But sometimes those YouTube uploads are just a beast. But anyway, so yeah, Instagram, YouTube. I have a Twitter account. I'm not really active on there, but if you shoot me a message, I'll probably see it eventually. Um, where else am I? Yeah, TikTok. I'm always there. I'm posting every day. Day in the life, what I eat for lunch, breakfast, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And Threads. I'm really active on Threads. I post all the shoes I'm picking up every day on
Right.
Threads. That's what I do exclusively there. So
full-time job, man.
yeah,
Well, Jake, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna re-listen, rewatch this a few times, I think, just to let it all soak in. But really great having you here.
yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Again, thank you for making the time and making accommodations so we can work at a time that works for everybody. This was a blast.
Awesome.
it was great. Thanks, Jake.
Have a good rest of your day, guys.
You as well.
Bye.